Great. Good evening, everybody. Why don't we kick off? I would like to extend a very, very, very warm welcome to the inaugural Bay Area Global Health Innovation Challenge. Woo! Fantastic. That is the spirit that I was hoping for tonight. This is the TechCrunch disruptor, the Y incubator of the global health world. You have to be under 30 probably to understand what that all meant. I had to look it up myself. For this competition, I will be introducing the judges in a minute. For this competition, students from universities all over the world, from all different disciplines, undergraduates through postgraduates, they developed hopefully game-changing, frugal, low-cost, low-tech innovations that could have a transformative potential on global health. And the response really has been overwhelming. This has been a competition co-organized by CUGH, the UC Berkeley Center for Global Public Health, and the Stanford University Center for Innovation in Global Health. And I understand from the organizers that the response has been amazing. I ought to thank Steph Bertozzi, Michelle Barry for the very kind invitation to me to moderate tonight. I had one request to me from Michelle, which was, please wear your pink wedding socks. So, happy to oblige. In terms of the response, there are three important numbers that you need to know. They are 87, 42, and 13. 87 submissions from 42 universities in 13 countries. Let's give it up. Phenomenal. 1/3 of those were from the Bay Area, and the range was really quite extraordinary. We had undergraduate bioengineering students from San Diego. We had a combination of medical and postgraduate students in Tanzania. We had postdocs in India. And last night, I believe, at UC Berkeley, there was an extraordinary semi-final, 10 semi-finalists competing for a place in today's final. We're down to the wire, people. Final 3. It could not be more exciting. And our final 3 are from Stanford, Hand Hero. Give it up for Hand Hero. Who have developed a hand splint that they're going to pitch shortly. From the University of Chicago, Meal Flour. Give it up for Meal Flour. Who have developed mealworm farms. I'll say that again, mealworm farms. And from a partnership of the All India Institute of Biomedical Sciences and Stanford, Nosicle. Give it up for Nosicle. Who developed a nasal air purification device. The winning team will receive $10,000 in seed funding to develop their innovation from the Health Roots Foundation for Global Health. What an amazing prize. What an incredible opportunity today. Let me give you my 1-minute take on why I think competitions like this are so important and why innovation matters. Because today we've been talking so much about the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular SDG 3, which has a series of 9 targets. So many of those targets are total and utter fantasies without innovation, right? We cannot achieve an end to AIDS or TB or malaria, or an end to newborn deaths, or an end to child deaths without innovation. Ain't gonna happen. I was very lucky to be part of a study, the Commission on Investing in Health, that showed that within a generation we could achieve a grand convergence in global health, a reduction universally in infectious maternal and child deaths. But we cannot do that with today's tools alone. We're going to need tomorrow's tools. And in one of the most important studies I've ever seen in my life, published this week by Dean Jameson, he looked at what it was that caused this extraordinary reduction in child mortality since 1970. 80% of it was due to the adoption of medical technologies. We know that countries that adopt medical technologies see an acceleration in their mortality decline. So tonight, we could have another game-changing technology that has that transformative effect. I'm going to introduce the judges. An amazing group of judges. In order of how they are seated. Amy Batson is Chief Strategy Officer for PATH, where she's responsible for guiding PATH strategy, strengthening partnerships in the global health community, and contributing to advocacy and policy priorities. She has spent over 2 decades in global health and has had positions at WHO, UNICEF, the World Bank, and more recently served in USAID as Senior Deputy Assistant Administrator. Round of applause for Amy. Chris Elias, President of the Global Development Program at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where he leads the foundation's efforts in integrated and innovative delivery, finding creative new ways to ensure solutions and products get into the hands of people in developing countries who need them the most. His background is in health and medicine, and before the Gates Foundation, he was President and CEO of PATH. Molly Coy is a social entrepreneur in residence for the Network for Excellence in Health Innovation, which is a non-profit national health policy institute focused on advancing high-value innovations. She was the Chief Innovation Officer at UCLA Health for 5 years, was head of public health practice at Hopkins, and has been in various leadership positions for state health departments in New Jersey and California. And last but certainly not least, Leighton Reed, a biotechnology entrepreneur, investor, and venture partner at Alloy Ventures, an early-stage investment firm in the information and healthcare industries. Leighton has founded and helped launch lots of different companies, including Affirmax NV, Averon, a biotech later acquired by MedImmune, and Avidia, which was acquired by Amgen, and today directs Alexa Pharmaceuticals, Cambrios Technologies, and Seriosity Inc. Love the name, Seriosity Inc. He completed his medical training at University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio, Duke, at the Brigham in Boston, where he had appointments at Harvard School of Public Health. I'm going to ask the panelists in a second to just give a slightly more personal take about what they bring to the table in terms of judging today. But let me tell you a little bit about how this is going to work. Each of the finalists are going to come up and they're going to give a pitch. The pitch is just 5 minutes long, and then the judges are going to give 10 minutes of Q&A with the finalists, and they are going to then be sort of sequestered away in some sort of hidden room, and they're going to judge the different innovations based on a range of criteria. In fact, I thought it would be interesting to just let you know how they're judging these innovations. There are 6 criteria, which are how innovative and creative the innovation is, whether it has a clear impact on global health, if the innovation is viable and scalable, if the idea is sustainable, if there's financial investment potential, and lastly, how well the team has communicated and presented their innovation. So the final thing I'm going to do is just to ask each panelist in turn, before we hear from the finalists, just to say a little bit about your take, but perhaps we'll start at the far end, on kind of what you bring to the table this evening.
Well, if I could have added anything to my introduction, it's that I was a founding director of Bio Ventures for Global Health, the nonprofit organization that spun out of Bio, the trade association, and still serve there. And have also been an advisor to 4 deans at the UC Berkeley School of Public Health as part of the Policy Advisory Council, which has also been a chance to connect with global health. And by the way, the size and scope of this meeting is it's unbelievably powerful source of optimism, because if the universities have all these programs, it's because the students care about it. And it's an absolutely amazing, exhilarating thing. My first time to come to CUGH, the H at the end makes it very fuzzy and cuddly, right? So as venture capitalists, we do a lot of pattern recognition, and you know we think about teams and technology and markets, and when you think about the teams for a medical device, it was always you'd have a doctor and an engineer and a dog. You know what the dog's for? Not always a happy ending. But the new thing, I just heard this at a conference on university startups in Washington, D.C. What you have to start a company today is a hipster, a hacker, and a hustler. Okay? So I'll be listening on the teams. Who is whom?
Molly.
Well, so I'm Molly Coy, and I've spent most of the last 20 or 30 years identifying high-value innovations. What were the innovations, mostly in the United States, that were really going to transform care and trying to drive their adoption? And so I've run a number of challenges in the U.S., most recently one in all the Catholic hospital systems in the U.S., but we've never had someone to lead our challenges as exciting as Gavin is. So I think we have a real lead here. And I'm very interested because in the last 3 years, a lot of people working on innovation within the U.S. and the healthcare system here have turned to frugal innovation and reverse innovation. So we're looking very hard for examples of better approaches to bring from other countries, and this really can be now multinodal, north, south, east, west. It really can come from anywhere to anywhere. And there are very exciting potential there. So as we looked at the initial list here, it looks like some really exciting potential that could go into that pot, developments that could be really important. So it's very exciting.
Thanks, Molly. Chris?
Yeah, I'm here mostly to continue learning. The first thing I learned was from Leighton that CUGH is pronounced CUGH. I thought it was cough, which I thought was an odd acronym for a health group. But anyway, so I'm excited to hear from the teams to both continue learning about innovations, but also to actually continue unlearning some of the things they taught me in medical school 30 years ago. I think what's exciting and what's been part of this transformation that Dean helped to document in his recent analysis of why we've made so much progress, particularly in the last 15 years in global health, is that we've broken out of the traditional silos of medicine, public health, engineering, and we're working in a very transdisciplinary way. And I've had the opportunity in my career to be, live through some of that transformation. So I was particularly excited to see some of the teams and how they're bringing together different disciplines, different perspectives to form innovative solutions to problems that are not going to be solved by medicine, engineering, public health in their silos or on their own. So I'm here to kind of keep unlearning that disciplinary structure I was taught a long time ago and to share in some of the excitement that these teams have for some breakthrough innovation.
Thanks, Chris. Amy?
It's really exciting to be here today. And in my background, I've been 25 years in global health, and being involved in innovation and the motivation, the incentives, the financial innovations to make things move forward, but from such different angles. And you see, like from the world of WHO and how they approach the place that they have on the innovation agenda, to UNICEF with a focus on markets, and the World Bank, which is all about the kind of financing side of things, to now being at an organization like PATH, where it's all about that pragmatic steps to take a really cool idea, but turn it into something that you can bring to scale. And it's that part in the middle that's the real slog, and that's super hard, but often gets forgotten because you have cool science on one end and then you have impact on the other. And so I think for me, I'm very excited to see these different ideas and then see how we can help make sure that that hard part in the middle happens so that these cool ideas turn into something that we can really see having impact around the world.
Fantastic. So this is the moment that you've all been waiting for. Let us give a very warm Bay Area welcome to our first team. Let's hear the pitch from Hand Hero.
Check, check. When we get hurt, we go to the doctor. Now imagine that the closest doctor is in Tijuana, Mexico. This is what it's like for rural burn patients in the developing world, for whom access to critical medical care can mean the difference between leading a life of productivity and acceptance versus one of disability and social stigma. We are Hand Hero, and our mission is to empower burn survivors to rejoin their community. This is Arati. She's 22 years old and lives in a rural village in far western Nepal. When Arati was just 2 years old, she fell into an open cooking fire and sustained severe third-degree burns on the palm of her hand. Because she was unable to receive proper treatment, aggressive scar tissue formed, closing her hand into an unusable fist. For nearly her whole life, Arati has struggled to work, to go to school, and more recently, to get married. Proper treatment for such injuries starts with reconstructive surgery, but must be followed by long-term physical therapy. A trained hand therapist will slowly, gradually increase the hand's range of motion over time using expensive customized splinting and many follow-up visits. Otherwise, patients are at high risk for recontracture, never actually achieving full recovery. During our field research in Nepal, we met so many patients like Arati who had been burned as babies and yet still have not regained use of their hands. We realized that while surgical capacity has been increasing, physical therapy greatly lags behind and remains extremely inaccessible for these patients. There are very few physical therapists in these settings, and most are ill-equipped with supplies and expertise. Current hand splinting options are either too expensive, not durable, comfortable, or simply unavailable. Most patients get sent home with nothing, only to recontract months later. This is the solution that we've created to solve this issue, and it is called Hand Hero. Hand Hero is a low-cost, easy-to-use, static progressive hand splint that the patient can take home with them after surgery. Vikram is modeling our product here. As you can see, it is comprised of a flexible exoskeleton and a steel lacing ratchet mechanism. So if your hand starts out contracted like this, you can just slowly turn the dial, going at your own pace, at home, until you achieve full recovery.
The evolution of Hand Hero is 2 years in the making. We started from popsicle sticks and cardboard, and then moved to a 3D printed design that we used for our first field trial in Nepal. From this trial, we learned that physical therapists are extremely excited to use Hand Hero, that patient compliance is great, even in the long term, and that our splint is functional at preventing contractures. Now, we have a mass production version of our splint that's fully injection molded and assembled in China, and that's what you, as the judges, see in front of you today. All these years of engineering make Hand Hero the best product available. It's the only one that's both affordable and effective, and its sleek design makes it so that patients are not ashamed to wear it, further improving compliance. Additionally, Hand Hero is the only splint that requires minimal follow-up, allowing patients in rural communities to continue to heal at home. Our model consists of selling at cost to our partner organizations, who then redistribute our splint to their patients. We also sell directly at cost to hospitals and individuals, and we subsidize our operating expenses through grants. We expect this model to be most effective in allowing us to get splints into the hands of patients who need them the most. In fact, we're excited to report that just this past week, we've sent 100 of these splints to Nepal in order to validate this concept. Down the line, we expect to expand into other indications in the developed world, and this will allow us to subsidize donations of Hand Heroes to other people. Now, Nepal is Hand Hero's spiritual home, and we are fully committed to establishing our business model there and achieving sustainability. However, hand burns are a global issue, and we receive requests from 12 nations spanning 3 continents for our splint. So as you can see, the business opportunity for Hand Hero is huge, but so is the opportunity for social impact. The fact remains that today alone, 3 billion people will use open fires to cook their meals, putting themselves at risk for burn injuries like these. And that's why we need your help. With your assistance, we can continue to develop our business model in Nepal, and we can also create a toddler-sized splint. And we have the right team to do this. We have a cross-disciplinary core spanning science, engineering, and technology. And Jana will be joining the Stanford Ignite mini MBA program this summer to continue to develop our team's business acumen. And if there are any gaps after that, we have 4 fantastic advisors that are willing to help us whenever we need it. Thank you.
to return to their seats. You have 10 minutes now to pose questions to the Hand Hero team.
Compliments on a nice presentation. The market data was up there too briefly to grok here, so maybe you could put the slide back up for the audience and then explain it for us, if that's all right.
Yeah, so particularly in year one, we're projecting that we'll be able to reach 1 million patients. Well, not directly, but that's our potential market. And then that's kind of translated over time because we expect, based on infrastructure changes and more people being able to receive these surgeries, we'll be able to help more people. But these are overall market sizes.
So did you derive that by bottoms up based on the incidence of the burns? Or do you have feedback from your partner organizations who are going to be providing the philanthropy that they can use this many?
Yeah, so we actually have both. So top down, we know, so in Nepal alone, for example, there are 55,000 reported burn injuries, which translate to about 26,000 injuries for which the splint would be applicable for. However, we do also know that these injuries are grossly underreported based on the number of patients who live out in the periphery and can't come into the hospitals. So that's our top down. From our bottoms up, one of our initial partners, Research International, they've been working on burn contracture surgeries for 20 some years now, and they have thousands of patient records that we've also been looking at. So we know from looking at their data that there's also a massive population of these injuries.
And what will the prize be used for? What barrier will it help you break through, or what will this be used to solve a problem for you?
So I'm going to look this up a little bit. One of the things that we'd like to develop is a smaller size. So you see the size you have in front of you right now is for older children, smaller size adult hands. But as we were saying, there's a lot of these injuries that also come from children who are in houses by themselves while their parents are out working and they fall into these fires. And so we don't have a size yet that's appropriate for pediatrics, for kids that are 2, 3, 4 years of age. And so that's one of the big things that we want to use to further expand.
Can you say a little bit about your experience testing this in the field? It's pretty intuitive to use, and you've got actually a nice set of low literacy instructions to go with it. But when you actually tested it, where were its failure modes, and what are you concerned about, given that there'll be very little support in these rural villages for ongoing training for people who need to use it?
Okay, so we have tried Hand Hero on 20 Nepali burn contracture patients. We went there exactly a year ago. Unfortunately, just at the end of that trip, the earthquake happened, and so we lost track of about half of them. But we have managed to follow up with 10 of them, and we have follow-up data from 3 weeks, 3 months, and 6 months, indicating that they did maintain the range of motion that they achieved after surgery. So the splint that we had them try on was actually the one you see in this picture on this girl Sangay's hand. So this was a field trial ready prototype, and it was sort of handmade with us using 3D printed parts and laser cut styrene. And one of the failure modes we saw was actually durability. The edges were snapping off, for instance. And so we actually used that as feedback to inform the types of materials we chose for the injection molded product, which is much more durable. In addition, we had the ratchet mechanism kind of snap off in certain cases, and so we've designed this housing that now fits that in the injection molded part that really eliminated that issue. And then we saw great patient compliance. This was one of the great things to see because it's, attractive and doesn't look like a PVC pipe. Patients actually were excited to wear it. This girl, Sangay, she followed me around the hospital. She was so sweet. She always had a smile on her face, always had her Hand Hero on. She was one of our first Hand Heroes. That was really rewarding to see, so.
Following up first a little on some of Leighton's questions, if you showed you wanted a million units as your first year, but if I understood correctly, you were saying in Nepal it was the top-down data from the hospitals was around 55,000. So how many countries are you thinking to roll out with in the first year?
Right, so we should clarify, this is not to say that we'll have 1 million units out in the field in the first year. This is our estimate of the number of patients that need this. And so, as we were saying, there are 26,000 patients in Nepal right now. We are looking right now at 12 other countries. So the 12 that Vikram mentioned, the team is heading to South America actually in a few weeks to continue looking for partners over there. We have been so far to Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, Nepal. And so those are our next targets. But like Vikram was saying, our first home is Nepal. And once we have a good base there, we're looking to expand to these other sites.
Okay. Follow up on that. When you looked in Nepal, have you identified who are the key stakeholders who have to, the decision makers or the influencers of decision makers that you would need to be engaging for this to be accepted across Nepal?
So what we found is sort of across the board, it's either the physical therapists or the surgeons at the hospital. When we bring that into a hospital and we show the doctors, hey, we have this splint, what do you think? If they say we want it, it goes into the hospital. If the physical therapist says, yes, we believe this works, it goes into the hospital. The bureaucracy of going through a pricing or an evaluation committee is much more straightforward there. And so our partner in Nepal, Dinesh, he's our director of operations over there, and he is a physical therapist who works at a hospital, and he has these incredible connections with physical therapist societies across Nepal, and he's been helping us launch there.
Judges, we have 1 or 2 more minutes if anyone still has a burning question.
We have a question here regarding sustainability. So what makes this, what becomes a flywheel that allows us to continue? It's obviously not organized as a profit-making enterprise that would use profits, or maybe you do have a different plan there. So what would keep this going 10 years from now?
So we're actually looking at other indications in the developed world, so particularly Dupuytren's and stroke. So just in the United States alone, there's 200,000 cases of Dupuytren's contracture. Sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing that. And yeah, so we expect to be able to sell our splint at least $75 in that case, which would be, and our production cost is $8 per splint, and we expect the cost to get it into somebody's hands is at 10. So that margin we can use to continue to run our operations, and we can also use it to continue to donate splints to people who cannot afford them.
And have you thought about, in the programs, if there's a way to link this to prevention of burns in the first place? It sounds like you get a lot of attention from some of your users, and you create a bit of a buzz. Is there an opportunity to use that to educate people about burn prevention so that not as many people need this?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the best case scenario, we would never need hand heroes because nobody would get burned in the first place, right? The easiest way to prevent a burn contracture is to prevent the burn. Unfortunately, given how many people use these open cooking systems or have open fire heating in their homes, it's not feasible to prevent all these. However, what we are doing is we're linking this with an educational component to say, you have a hand hero, you take it to your home, your village, and it's a very visible piece of equipment, right? It's not something that you would expect to see in a Nepali village 300 miles from Kathmandu. And so we also have the patients teach their families and teach their neighbors about the importance of fire safety. When we were there the first time in Nepal, actually, I remember being out in a village, and there was a little kid who was crawling towards the fire, and the parent, twice, maybe 3 times in an hour, and the parents just pulled him back and said, little rascal, stop. And they were convinced that their kid could not get burned because they hadn't seen burns in their village. But I think having seen a burn, having seen a hand hero in their town would be a very compelling argument to say, listen, we have firsthand experience, we've seen how severe a burn can be, now let's use some of these patients as advocates for burn prevention as well.
Thank you. So, Lawrence, Vikram, Kimberly, Jana, thank you so much for that very, very compelling presentation. Judges, please take your seats. And let's give a very warm welcome to Meal Flour. Are we getting worms? We are. We are eating meal flour cookie crisps. Someone else can go first.
Hello? Test.
Hi, I'm Joyce,
I'm Elizabeth.
and we are Mealflower, an environmentally sustainable social enterprise that is going to improve health, revolutionize farming, and create jobs. We're from the University of Chicago. We've had a lot of experience in international development, and in our experiences, we saw how poor health problems are more than simply a matter of health care. They're also woven into socioeconomic disparities that both create and are created by conditions of poor health. For example, protein deficiency alone accounts for over 21 million disability-adjusted life years, or dailies. So it has a huge impact on things like productivity and school performance, which leads to a less productive workforce, increased unemployment, and ultimately low income. And these economic problems feed back into conditions of poor health. So a lot of the NGOs that I worked with in Guatemala tried to address protein deficiency by importing nutritional supplements. But this required costly infrastructure and transportation that's not feasible for most food desert regions like crowded urban slums. It also didn't address how fundamental economic issues like low income and unemployment are linked to poor nutrition. We recognize that effectively developing a sustainable solution requires a two-pronged approach that addresses both of these problems.
Mealflower is a social enterprise to build mealworm farms made from recycled materials that will manufacture a protein-rich flour in the heart of crowded urban areas. We will sell this flour to local bakeries as well as directly to the community. To just go over the production process, it starts by collecting materials to build the farms, which are tiered structures similar to a bookshelf, only about a square foot around. The farmers raise the mealworms, dry roast them, and turn them into a fine protein-rich powder that can be mixed into foods or used as a healthier substitute to traditional flour. Mealworms are incredibly nutritious and contain twice the protein density as beef. They thrive in most environments and only need a small amount of water to survive. Also, unlike other sources of animal protein, raising mealworms does not contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. The farms take up little space, and instead of relying on existing infrastructure to bring nutrition into communities, communities are manufacturing their own nutrition and protein. Most importantly, Mealflower will not be introducing anything truly foreign into communities. There may be stigma in the US, but actually 80% of the world already eats insects, and these are the areas that Mealflower will expand. The flour can be easily incorporated into existing local staple foods, from ugali in Kenya to tortillas in Guatemala. The farm will have three main sources of revenue: selling the flour to local bakeries, to local community members, and the mealworm waste can be sold as a fertilizer. We will pilot this meal flour in 2 pilot sites of Guatemala and Kenya. But what would something like this look like? For example, in Kenya, we will be starting in Kianda, a neighborhood of Kibera, one of the largest slums in Africa. We will spend a year in Kianda developing our process in 3 phases: community engagement, recruitment, and implementation. Right now, we're in the community engagement step, where we're talking to our existing partnerships with the Kenya Ministry of Agriculture and the World Food Program. The next step is recruitment, where we will hire and train employees, and then implementation, where we will build the mealworm farms and start to produce the flour. We will grow through a micro-franchise model, which we think is an ideal growth model for expanding Mealflower because of our commitment for letting communities take charge of their own nutrition.
And as Mealflower grows, our income will come from the initial payments by community members that want to set up a Mealflower franchise, and then their subsequent monthly payments. These profits will then be reinvested into community nutrition education programs and support for Mealflower's expansion. In order to help us expand at this rapid pace, we've already established partnerships with local bakeries, community organizations, and government institutions in Kenya and Guatemala. And the beauty of Mealflower is that it's extremely scalable and adaptable to different settings. Mealworms thrive in a variety of climates, and our technology is simple. The social enterprise model can be sustained by the community itself for long-term growth without creating dependency. So what's so innovative about this solution is that we aim to fix health problems by preventing health problems. And because there's an infinite number of health problems and an infinite number of potential medical technical solutions, but you don't really get into the heart of the problem until you develop solutions that address the underlying structural barriers to lead to health disparities. Mealflower is a social enterprise that aims to address the interrelated problems of poor health and a lack of economic opportunity. We improve health by reducing protein deficiency. We preserve the environment by upcycling existing materials, and we create jobs through a micro-franchise model. Thank you.
Judges, I invite you up.
Well, that was lots of fun. Tell us a little bit more about how, about where the technology is, and what there is to franchise, and what's involved in making dry roasted mealworms.
Great. So we actually have several appendix slides that may be hard to see. But the farms, in terms of the technology itself, that's why it's so adaptable to multiple environments, because we'll go in and see what materials we can use to build the farm. So for example, in Kianda, which will be one of our first sites, if you've ever been to the area, there's a lot of materials around, such as like jerry cans, which can be cut in half and used as the base of the mealworm farms, and then stacked to make the tiered structure.
And there are also currently a lot of do-it-yourself blogs online with communities of people that need mealworms for chicken feed or fishing that have already developed these from existing scrap materials. And then there are also high-tech solutions, and we're trying to use these existing methods for our model.
But if you're interested in getting someone to pay a franchise fee, no matter how small, you have to have something they can't get somewhere else. So once they have the idea and a bakery willing to buy it, I'm still struggling a little bit to understand not how innovative or creative it is, but how protectable in a way that you could generate that micro business model.
So we do want to develop the meal flour brand, and we do recognize that overseeing the different micro franchises may be difficult. We want to have local employees in each one of our pilot locations to oversee several different spots. But at the same time, if we do lose track of some of the businesses, we don't see that as a problem, because if our goal is to improve nutrition, we don't mind if people borrow from our technologies.
So one more, if I could, what are the inputs then? Do you have your own proprietary worms? It doesn't sound like it. So where do the worms come from, and then where does the worm food come from?
Well, the worms are already naturally in the areas that we will be, but of course they're like around the ground. So we will provide a starter pack of the worms and the initial education to know how to build the farms. And then once we have the initial location and the flagships in each of our spots, because it is an organism, it regenerates on its own. It's constantly growing, and that's part of the raising process. So after we get the initial starter pack to each location, we won't need to ship in any more materials because it's self-sustaining.
Do you have any idea what you may not have enough experience yet, but what kind of quality control problems you might have, and whether some of the independent use that Leighton was referring to that would be hard to control might introduce quality issues or problems that could doom the larger project, the kind of unanticipated consequences?
Yeah, because we're a micro franchise model, we hope that we don't get to the size in each location to have the possible contaminations, because we want to keep it small and it's harder for invasive things to come into the farms. But part of the growth model, we do want someone overseeing each location that would go door to door, and also connect each location with the bakery contacts that we've established and the government organizations in the area.
Yeah, to answer your question with examples of potential sources of contamination, from our research, usually this comes from things like, in rare cases, grain mites or things like that, and usually these can be detected pretty early on, and a little bit of heating can actually kill these pretty easily without significantly impacting the mealworms.
So I had two questions. The first is about acceptability. It all makes sense from a protein content point of view, but what kind of insects do they currently eat in Kibera? And how is this going to fit into, people's notions of what's acceptable for the diet, even though you've made, I think, a compelling case about the quality of the protein content. That's not usually what drives people's dietary choices.
So that's part of our community engagement process, and there's actually been a lot of efforts in parts of East Africa already to incorporate insect eating into diets already, because they're such a great source of nutrition in addition to protein. And that's part of our community engagement process. We've been sending out surveys to these communities, and I can show you. Yeah, so here's feedback from one of our surveys, actually in Guatemala, but the thing is that protein deficiency and malnutrition are so severe in these areas that communities are totally open to things like this. And also in areas, at least in Central America, and also in areas near the Kibera region, there's already grubs that are eaten and things like that.
My second question was about how you link the micro-franchise model for production to what could be, in a successful growth phase, a very large-scale purchasing, right? So the World Food Program usually buys things by the ton. And so how do you connect multiple small producers to one big consumer like the Purchase for Progress program of the World Food Program?
So I think our initial aim is to just first work on developing this very small model in a pilot site and sort of proving this concept that insect eating can improve the nutrition, and using that to prove to these larger organizations.
People who eat mealworms would probably rather eat locally, Chris.
Yeah, that's
They're
actually,
local
yeah.
more. But is it possible that the places where you really have this unmet need of protein malnutrition, the garbage dumps may not be full of this wonderful mealworm food, because there's already a lot of humans scavenging the dumps. Have you looked at whether there's enough
Yeah,
carbohydrate and whatever substrates the mealworms need?
mealworms can eat almost any organic waste, and that's including, as you can see above, like banana peels, which wouldn't really be
Human waste?
Well, they could, but we wouldn't want to eat those. But you can control what you're putting into the farms. But the foods like banana peels is something that we can feed to the mealworms that will be edible after, and it's not something that people would normally scavenge for to eat themselves.
The question that Chris raised about what kind of insects are culturally acceptable, because it's not all equal for different countries, I think is a really interesting one, and sort of seeing how your partners in Kenya are responding and sort of viewing the mealworms as opposed to some other form of an insect that there is culturally accepted, and how that plays out will be really an important one. But one other question I had was, have you thought about, as this microfinance model, of linking it to women's economic empowerment? Because it seems like the type of focus that would be, it's small scale, it's often right near the home. It really could be something that's linking into some of these different programs that are really supporting sort of micro-franchise to women and giving them sort of these different economic opportunities.
Yeah, that's definitely something we talked about. We've also been talking to similar kind of social enterprises who are working with school children, because this is also something that can be a program in schools. And we talked to a daycare social enterprise, and that's a possible place where you can house these, so empowering women and children and things that you mentioned.
That is all that we have time for. Elizabeth, Joyce,
Thank you.
Thank you for another great presentation. And last but certainly by no means least, give a very warm welcome to Team 3, Nosicle.
A very good evening to the judging panel and all those present here today. Meet Gopal. He's an auto rickshaw driver who gets breathless every time he navigates the polluted streets of Delhi. He purchased the facial mask to protect himself. Not only was this expensive, costing him around $5 for every use, but it was also uncomfortable, caused a lot of resistance to breathing, and was associated with a social stigma. Passengers would refuse to get into his rickshaw, fearing he was suffering from tuberculosis. This led to a dip in his revenues and his 3 children dropping out of school. Gopal is not alone. Every 3rd Indian is affected by air pollution. Breathing air in India is equivalent to smoking 15 to 20 cigarettes every day. Not only does it cause respiratory diseases, but even heart attacks and strokes. there's a 50% reduction in the lung capacity of children due to this menace, and irreversible damage. Why only India? Even globally, there are 8 million premature deaths attributed to air pollution. 5 million of these occur in South Asia alone. OECD projections state that by the year 2050, the global premature mortality due to environmental risks is going to fall, but that for particulate matters is going to more than double. That led us to think, what do people like Gopal need to protect themselves? We ran a survey at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences at Delhi and outside, and realized that they need a solution that is barely visible, it's user-friendly, that is, it's comfortable and doesn't cause much resistance to breathing, has a high purification efficiency, and is available at a low cost, that is, a frugal solution. That's where we came up with a breakthrough technological innovation, a novel non-membrane-based technology which is mimicking mucus secreted by the respiratory tract, and incorporated it into a product, the Nozicle, an intranasal air purification device which purifies air with minimal air resistance. As you can see, it is barely visible. This product will be reusable, made from locally sourced materials, and cost less than 10 cents per use. It was based on our insight that 90 to 95% of the air that enters the respiratory tract is through the nose. Not only are we looking to innovate from the product and the technology standpoint, we are even looking to integrate social innovation into this product. And that's where people like Gopal can serve as salesmen who can sell this product to their passengers, leading to further income generation and motivation for regular use. We'll start off with the most motivated and the most vulnerable populations by partnering with strategic organizations. Prime amongst these are the traffic policemen, 20% of whom suffer from asthma, the auto rickshaw drivers, the municipal workers and sweepers, and the daily commuters, such as the bike riders. We expect to reach at least 100,000 individuals 2 years after entering the market. We need a 3-year R&D cycle before we do so. And how will we achieve this health impact? We have a uniquely interdisciplinary core management team comprising Debayan Saha, a mechanical engineer with experience in startups, who will head the business and the design side of things. In Leighton's word, he's the hustler. Shashi Ranjan, a biomedical scientist who's got experience in microfluidics and particle separation technology, which really forms the core of our technology, and he's going to head the R&D segment. And myself, Harsh, who's a general surgeon with experience in medical device development, who'll head the clinical and regulatory side. In Leighton's word, the hacker. So we expect our revenues to exceed the total costs by year 5, for which we need an investment, a seed funding of around $150,000, a Series A funding of around $1 million, and a Series B of $2.5 million. So in a short span of 6 months, we've come a long way from our initial prototyping to a very crude looks-like prototype right now, as well as an experimental setup to test this technology for purification efficiency and pressure drop. Our initial results show that this technology can filter 80 to 90% of particles of PM10 grade. However, we do need equipment to test for particles of PM2.5 size, and that's where this grant comes into play. We'll use the $10,000 if we win it for equipment purchase, PCT filing, as protecting a technology is really important, running a pilot study, as well as consumables for further prototyping. We are backed by a distinct team of mentors from the business, clinical, as well as technical side. Amongst them is Dr. Rajiv Doshi, a serial medtech entrepreneur and an associate at Stanford University, Dr. Randeep Guleria, who is a professor of pulmonology at AIIMS in New Delhi and a world-renowned expert in air pollution. As a team, we've also worked on multiple products and won various awards, and also featured on the homepage of the Stanford University website. We are confident that we can take this product to the masses and empower each and every individual with the right to breathe clean and fresh air. Thank you.
Judges, please come on up.
Congratulations, it's fascinating. My background is in environmental sciences, so I'm really interested in this. What stage are you at in the actual demonstration of the clinical efficacy of this?
So now we are in the phase of technical feasibility demonstration where we have shown some of the results. So since we started like few months ago where we set up our experimental setup and started experimenting. So initial results are very promising with our breakthrough technology. So the technology is, as we mentioned, it's biomimicry technology. So like while we were brainstorming, we thought, why not adopt nature, which has evolved years and years to give us a technology, and then enhance upon that. So we did our test, and in the picture, if you can see the particles, and so yeah. So some of the particles can be seen there. They are black color particles attracted to that. These are bigger particles, and that can be seen. Of course, there are smaller particles stuck there, but right now we cannot see it. Our measuring instrument is sensitive for PM10. We have done PM2.5 measurements with that instrument, but we are not very confident about the accuracy of that device, and that's why we need urgently the money from here so that we can buy accurate equipments to do that studies. Clinically, we will go once we have our technology fully matured, and we do some biocompatibility testing before putting things inside somebody's nose.
Just to add to that, the prototype that you're looking at right now, it's a scaled-up version. This is not the actual prototype that will go in the nose. As I saw Chris, he was trying to put it in his nose. It's a little bigger than what but that's just to demonstrate it to all of you.
Yeah.
What do we know about the tolerability of restriction to airflow? So you must have measured restriction to airflow in your prototype devices. So tell us what the metric is. But then how long before people say, you know, it's just a little bit more resistance than I'm willing to deal with?
Right. So the gold standard for filtration right now is the N95 mask, and they show a pressure drop of between 10 and 20 millimeters of water. What we are looking at is something close to...
When they're properly fitted.
I'm sorry?
A lot less when they're not fitted properly.
Yes, a lot less when they're not fitted, but then they're not effective, right? What we are looking at is a pressure drop of around 1 millimeter of water or lesser. And we've run initial tests for those. Again, we need more sophisticated equipments to validate that study, but we are very confident because we are not using a membrane-based technology. We are not using a porous material. What we are doing is allowing a free flow, but increasing the interaction of air with the material that is lining the inside of the device.
With our current results, we have already reached around 5 mm of water. But we are very confident we can go below 1.
So you'll clearly have to understand whether even that is enough to shift people to mouth breathing, which is not protected, but the mask does. Do you have any of your own data on the, as opposed to the published data on mouth? What % of airflow is mouth versus nose, and how that varies with seasonal allergy or 100 other things?
So we've got published data, none of our own data. We're just 6 months into the whole process of starting up. We intend to run a study at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences to get more data, but published data by Bennett et al., as we showed you, shows that 90 to 95% of the air that enters the respiratory tract is through the nose. And this is data which is published for mainly Indian and African populations.
Can you say a word about what the regulatory pathway is and what your estimated time is to get through that? Is there a precedent device that you can claim equivalence to, or is this a brand new medical device?
So our mentor, Dr. Rajiv Doshi, he's the founder of Ventus Medical. They made a device which also fits into the nose, but is used for a different need, that is obstructive sleep apnea. We can use it as a precedent device to go down the 510K pathway. If not, there are a few filters that are available which fit into the nose, but they are again using porous material, porous membranes, and we can use those as well as predicate devices.
What's the expected lifespan of one of these? If you're breathing in polluted air, it's catching those pollutants in the filter.
Yeah, so the lifespan for the purification medium is supposed to be around 8 to 10 hours in the open environment, in the polluted environment. So we are like expecting 1 day of use for each device.
And so what kind of cost are you thinking about for it?
So we are thinking about two models for this. One is completely disposable model where you use this device for a day and throw it. Another, we are looking for reusable model where you can wash out the purification media and refill it with the purification media that we give you and use the device for like 15 to 20 days. Yeah. There the cost we are targeting to reach around 10 to 20 cents.
For the reusable?
For each use. Yeah.
For the reusable one, and for the disposable one, we are targeting a cost between 50 cents and $1.
Yeah, so because this was based on our insight after doing a lot of survey and understanding the culture in our own country, that people don't really want to throw things there. So when you go to middle class and lower middle class, then if you hand over and tell them that this is disposable, still they will not throw it. And they want it really cheap, like 10, 20 cents per usage. So why don't we make things that fits them so that they use it and they buy it? But there are upper sections who are ready to pay more. So for them, we are ready to make a disposable device.
And it seems like your business model is that there's a large enough market for you to gain profitability in 4 years in India. Do you have thoughts about going to other markets where there's similar, China, other places with serious urban pollution?
Yeah, of course, like as Harsh mentioned that the whole Southeast Asia is affected. China is our neighbor, then Bangladesh is there, Pakistan is there, and all are very near to us. So once we establish this model in India, we'll start moving into these geographies.
And what's your model for expanding? Are you going to produce it in India and export it to those countries, or are you going to do a tech transfer for local production? Is it a complex manufacturing process?
So actually for Pakistan and Bangladesh, this type of countries, we would still prefer making them in-house and export it there. But for China, we still need to figure out the ways because in China, the culture is not very similar to us. It's a bit different. So that country, we still need to figure it out.
And we are also very skeptical about our IP being stolen in China. So we still need to figure that one out.
That's it. That is all that we have time for. Let's give it up to Shashi and Harsh. So what's going to happen now is Michelle Barry is going to take the judges to a kind of concrete bunker, put some headphones on so they can't hear any conversation happening. And we are going to do a couple of things whilst they are gone for a few minutes. The first thing we're going to do once they are out of the room is a little bit like the US election. I consider there to be like an electoral college vote, which really counts, and then a popular vote, which is kind of fun. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to see if there was a crowd pleaser, which will have absolutely no bearing whatsoever, just so I'm clear, on the actual results. It is an electoral college tonight. But wouldn't it be fun just to see if there's a crowd pleaser? So we're going to do this in a completely and utterly non-scientific way that is simply going to involve a show of hands that we're not even going to count. We'll have a subjective impression. So let's see who thinks the winner should be Hand Hero. Okay, great. Who thinks the winner should be Meal Flour? Okay. Who thinks Nosicle should be the winner? Oh, Lord. Can anyone help me out? Was anyone counting? No, okay. I think it's a tie. It's a tie, you're all winners. Thank goodness. I would now like to invite, sorry, I'm losing my voice, Health Roots to come and tell us a little bit about themselves. And I think I've been asked to actually have you up on stage. Here's a mic.
Thanks. Thanks, Gavin. How long do we have before the judges are back? My wife said 1 minute. That's right. So I'm Eric Grigsby. I'm here to represent Health Roots Foundation, and it's our privilege to stand behind this competition. I want to recognize, of course, my wife, Mary Roca, who is in the second row, who is my partner. Yeah. Thank you. Mary was a practicing dentist for a number of years, very successful dental practice, and she actually stimulated a lot of the relationship between our foundation and UC Berkeley School of Public Health through sponsoring some global oral health educational programs. She now runs our winery and vineyard operations, so I told Steph that I lost the flip of that coin a few years ago to see who could do that instead of stay in medical practice and dental practice. But it really is our pleasure to be here, and Health Roots is a tiny family foundation compared to many of those that you see on the podium and on the flyers and talked about here at this meeting. And our mission is really to catalyze and support and bring some enthusiasm, bring like-minded people together in the same room at the same time. And we really feel proud that we've been able to do that and support a little bit of that here with this competition. This is really a combined adventure between Stanford and UC Berkeley School of Public Health, and I want to really especially appreciate Michelle Berry's efforts from Stanford. Thank you. And really have enjoyed our budding friendship, Steph Bertozzi, Dean here at UC Berkeley School of Public Health. Thank you. But I know from being a little bit in a leadership position that those guys really don't do a lot of the work. So I have to thank Hildy Fong, who's really been great to work with. Hildy, thank you very much. And Rachel Leslie from Stanford. Thank you so much, Rachel. This has really been fantastic. And of course, I told the same story last night, but I don't have it. I grew up in the South, and I have a lot of simile and a lot of metaphor, but I don't have another one to describe this, so I'll say again. You know, in Tennessee, as they say, every daddy crow thinks that his baby crow is the blackest. And so that means we're all just very proud of our own children. And so I want to give special thanks to Camille Grigsby Roca, my oldest progeny, who really helped Hildy and Rachel and really did an awful lot of work in visualizing this. So thank you. Yeah, so there are thanks enough to go around. The judges who we had last night were incredibly capable, had a lot of fun, I think, also. And we looked at 7 projects that didn't make it here today, but they were excellent, and there was certainly no drop-off between number 3 and number 10. And the judges last night were so impressed with several of the projects and anxious to stay involved, and we frankly hope that the judges today will do that. So we've actually, a couple of us adopted certain of the projects who weren't involved in this 3 so that we can give them sort of ongoing mentorship and a sounding board and a place to call when they're completely lost. And of course, I can share the idea of being completely lost, but at least we'll do it all together. And the 7 teams, hopefully some of them are here. Anybody from the teams that weren't successful here? Yeah, thank you guys very much. Great projects. So again, Health Roots is very privileged. We feel a great sense of privilege and pleasure to be here and help support this. We hope this is the start of a project which will have a lot of legs. And we're looking for all of you to help us with ideas and some enthusiasm and helping us loop in, build the top of the funnel as big as we can and make it as wide as we possibly can and capture all the projects that are of interest. And we want to make it deeper too. So we really want to encourage you to help us understand how we can provide mentorship, kind of ongoing, with all of the innovation capital we have in the Bay Area. We want to bring this to bear in this innovation challenge. So again, from my wife, Mary Roca, my daughter, Camille, and all those that were involved in this, it's our privilege to stand behind this project and our privilege to be here. Thank you very much. Should I have talked longer?
Okay, apparently you are free to do what you like, talk amongst yourselves. I've got 2 mealworm cookies, if anyone is interested in a mealworm cookie. They're really delicious. Auction them. What a fantastic idea. I'm going to leave the mealworm cookies here. I think it should only just be a couple of minutes before the judges come back. Talk amongst yourselves. And we will reconnoiter in a minute or 2. Michelle. Okay. Yeah, we tied. They tied. Everyone's a winner here tonight. I'm also going to pass around the hand hero because it's really quite interesting. It's got this great tightening device. Pass it round. Oh yeah, do. Yeah. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is the moment that we have all been waiting for. And I believe the judges have nominated a spokesperson. Chris Elias is going to be the spokesperson for the judges. What I would love Chris to do is obviously to announce the winner, but then also say a little bit about what was it about this team that you as a panel of judges found so compelling tonight. Chris, over to you.
So, the first thing to say is that my colleagues nominated me to be the spokesperson as we were walking up the aisle. So they got to it faster than I could suggest one of them. So this was a tough discussion, a tough decision, because actually all three of these groups deserve $10,000, and they've done a great job. You know, I think, and it's amazing actually how much has gotten done in just what I understand to be a relatively short period of time in a very competitive environment. So we had quite a bit of debate and discussion to arrive at a final decision, and we, in the end, is there a drum roll? We decided to award the prize to meal flour.
Woo! Woo! What should I do? Come up? Yes, come on up! Come on up!
Come on up!
Woo! Do you have a check? Okay. You just have to imagine a very giant check saying $10,000 that is being passed to meal flour right now.
So, because we didn't have enough time to rehearse this, I'll say a little bit about my thinking about our decision and then ask my colleagues to fill in. I think while all three were impressive, and all three still need some work in terms of finalizing the business model to scale and sustainability, et cetera, what I think we appreciated was the broad sort of system view of understanding a problem and understanding how a particular technology of the worm production of protein could fit into a broader system. And I think that was a bit of an advantage over the other two, which were more about the technology, and great technology in both cases. I think the Hand Hero in particular has already, in a relatively limited application, begun to demonstrate how life-changing its potential is. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity for that to go to scale. And I suspect will be limited in its scaling more by the access to surgery than by the cost or acceptability of the device itself. And we felt, I think, that the nosical technology needed a bit more proof of concept than we saw here, but it obviously also has tremendous potential, and once proven and through regulatory process, et cetera, can make a huge public health benefit in India and other polluted urban environments. But it was, as I said, it was a tough choice, and but in the end, I think we had consensus that meal flour was our winner. So let me invite my colleagues to add to that.
Leighton.
Congratulations. I picked up the dud. There we go. To meal flour, and say a little bit about that and a couple of thoughts for the other teams, which had very credible and interesting solutions. And in the case of meal flour, I think that it was the potential, just the sense of scale that could be achieved here if you get it right. But it seemed to me, and this is a venture capitalist speaking, usually looking for an economic return, but I think the leverage that comes from being clearly differentiated gives you a staying power. You get to recruit the best micro-entrepreneurs. You get to recruit the best bakeries. And all of the things in the supply chain that would make this scale, if it's clear to people that the meal flour solution to making mealworms to make flour is the one. So if you have to make up a micronutrient, as Molly suggested, that's the only way to really make those cookies good. And the chocolate chip cookies were terrific, by the way. Haven't had a cookie that good since I was in Colorado. That's why I'm smiling.
I'd add some almonds to the cookies, actually.
But I think it needs some secret sauce or something. And there's so many ways to do that differentiate what you're doing from anybody else who's trying to do it. And that doesn't have to raise the barrier to entry. It actually, things that aren't as interesting unless you pay a little bit for them. There's a lot of things you could do with that. But bravo on the scale and on getting us all to taste the mealworms. Shall we all talk about meal flour and then say a little bit about the other companies?
Yeah. Molly. Oh, Amy.
I think also what was interesting about meal flour is what you're kind of marketing is a kit, and it's that kind of economic program that you're putting together that could be used with populations. But the link to the bakery, which becomes your demand and your draw and sort of that economic empowerment, is really a nice and interesting twist. And as much as you can really be developing that in the communities, so that what you're bringing is also developing this bakery network that's then drawing from these individual sort of micro farmers, as you think of them, is really very exciting. I think what's also very interesting is right now the world is really looking for those kind of cross-sectoral solutions, and this one that is addressing so much the issues of the environment at the same time as you're looking at health and protein is particularly exciting.
And maybe I can add something that sort of bridges to some of the other candidates, because I think that this also illustrates a very real problem we have even domestically in the U.S. when you're looking at innovations, and certain innovations have a very broad population impact, and other point solutions, like for example Hand Hero, are really excellent for a more limited number of people. And how do we make sure that the smaller point solutions that are highly impressive don't get lost in the shuffle when we are orienting ourselves initially to the broader solution for larger numbers of people? And so I think it was a very genuine thing that Chris said, that we really want the audience to understand. We were impressed by all three, and the air pollution one is the kind of thing that if the science bears out through the rest of the cycles of proof of concept and the clinical trials and all, that actually is attacking a really huge problem in many of these countries. So there's lots of room to keep working on these, and we were quite impressed. We thought that the Hand Hero had real potential for commercial underwriting and success, that we were impressed by the work that had been done to think about the potential U.S. or developed economy market that might underwrite the kind of work in other societies. So,
any final thoughts on Hand Hero and No Skull? Because I would like to give the last word to meal flour.
Well, so on Hand Hero, beautiful, elegant device. This is going to be a product, either a nonprofit product or a commercial product. I think you made a good point on how this could be sustainable if you find a partner in the developed world, and you didn't do a bad job of pronouncing Dupuytren's contractors. I'm sure a Francophone could get it even better. But so it's not too early to go to the producers of these kind of devices in the U.S. market and start getting their feedback. And having them as a partner they could end up underwriting a lot of what you're trying to do overseas. And we wish you well with that. It's a beautiful device. I didn't see any left-handed versions of it, but I'm sure at least it's somewhere on your roadmap. But I missed that myself personally. Can we say a little bit about NoSickle, or you want?
Last words on NoSickle.
So we didn't see enough data to get really excited about this. In terms of, I'm not even sure that well-fit N95 masks actually result in lower pulmonary or other morbidity in those urban environments. So I'd love to see that data before turning towards an elegant solution like this. It is an elegant solution. You've given a lot of thought, the idea of using absorption on a surface rather than just a barrier. Great ideas. The thing that I thought was the most interesting and actionable idea is your idea about the value chain in marketing, where the cab driver is selling to his customers. And so while you pursue your ideas about the air pollution barrier solution, think about other things besides cigarettes, and a value chain similar to an Amway vertical marketing for a public health technology in those societies could allow you to have enormous scale and benefit for the people you're trying to reach. So think about the distribution channel where you may actually have the most differentiated and actionable idea, and keep pushing on the technology.
So I would like to give the last word to Mifla. Is it true that you are undergraduates? Wow. Whoa. I recently joined Duke, and they're probably going to fire me for saying this, but can we offer you a place at grad school at Duke? Please. I would like to... We're all going to fight for you. I'd like to give you two the last word. I mean, it was incredibly impressive. Such a great fit with the theme of the morning around planetary health. Really great fit. The gender dimension, I thought, was also really attractive and really compelling. Please give us the last word.
Well, first we just want to thank CUGH and Health Roots and the judges. And
She's thanking judges, Health Roots, mother, producer, but most of all the Academy for this wonderful award.
But I also just wanted to say, like, amazing job of the other two teams. I know that we were talking a lot yesterday at the dinner and even before today, and we'll see you in Guatemala, I know, because you guys are headed there this summer, and so are we. And also, I really loved your air pollution research because, on the side, I actually presented earlier today on household air pollution, so I loved that innovation. But we're just so happy that, because we truly believe in innovative preventative health solutions, and so we're so happy that other people are also prioritizing that as well. Thank you.
Let's give... Do you have any... No, are you sure? This is your moment. No, okay, then let's give a last final round of applause to all the innovators and also to Leighton, Molly, Chris and Amy, our incredible judges, and to all of you. Thanks for your support. We would like to make sure we get photos of all the innovators and perhaps photos of the judges. So don't disappear right yet. Do we have a camera, a great camera? Yes, beautiful. Good night, everybody.